Aloha and welcome to Thumbing Through Yesterday, the podcast where we take our favorite books down from the shelf, dust them off, and remind ourselves why we love them. My name's Tom Galley. Joining me, we have Tony Pasculi.
Happy to be here.
And what are we reading today?
Today we're reading Lost Boys, a novel by Orson Scott Card. This is one of his standalone novels, of which he's written many. Most of his standalones I find very forgettable. They're interesting, they're worth reading. It's like, that was fun, and then I never think about them again. This one somehow has seized my imagination, and I have read it many, many, many times. I love this book. But I am curious to know what you think of it.
I'm going to issue a warning at the moment. I usually don't care too much about saying spoiler alerts because I figure nobody's going to listen to the podcast that hasn't read the book.
Yeah.
If you're thinking of reading this book and you haven't, don't listen to this.
Yeah.
Trust me.
In order to talk about this book properly, we're going to spoil the ending severely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
And the ending is one of the things that makes the book. The ending, for me, is a gut punch. I don't know if it lands that way for you or not. Yeah.
Well, we'll get to the ending. I want to start with the prologue.
Oh, the prologue.
You are genuinely anti-prologue, right?
Yes.
As a general principle, anyway.
I am.
This may be the creepiest prologue I have ever read.
Yeah.
And it completely shaped my reading of the entire book.
Yeah, I can see that.
All the way through. So the prologue is called Boy, and it's a self-referential look inside a serial killer.
Yeah.
And then I spend the entire rest of the book trying to figure out which one of these characters is Boy.
Yeah.
And I read this weird thing that happens with Stevie. I'm like, oh, is Stevie becoming Boy? Stevie can't be Boy. And then this thing happens with Step. I'm like, ooh, maybe Step is actually Boy. Could Step be Boy? And it's literally just every time something slightly sideways happens, I'm stepping outside of the book going, wait, is this Boy?
I think that's deliberate. I hate this prologue.
Really?
I don't like it. And I think it's there for a reason, very deliberately so, because the ending pays off the fact that there's been a serial killer operating through this neighborhood, which we don't really find out other than this prologue until very near the end of the book. We just know that people have been disappearing and it's kind of sad and mysterious and nobody knows what's really going on. Are they running away? Who knows? But having this setup means that, in a sense, this is Chekhov's gun, right? It's
right.
Like, okay, there is a serial killer. You are forewarned. And so pay attention to that, and it's going to pay off in the end. And it does. That said, I think the tone of the prologue is so alien to the rest of the book that I find it very off-putting.
It's something that Stephen King would aspire to.
Yeah.
This prologue.
And the rest of the book is a very sort of domestic family drama.
Well, you see, and this is actually what kept me going.
Interesting.
Because without that prologue, I got in the middle, and this guy writes long chapters.
He does.
I'm not a fan of long chapters. I like bite-sized morsels. But I'm getting into the middle of this book, and I'm starting to wonder, what is this book? Because without a prologue, it's just this meandering litany of the ongoing happenings with this family.
Yeah.
It's a family that we find out in the first quarter of the book, there's no real hint of religiosity to this at all. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly we find out they're Mormons, and the book becomes very Mormon for a large chunk of it. And I feel like if it's accurate, I've learned quite a bit about the inner workings of the LDS. But we've got a family that's moved to a new neighborhood because the guy's a crackerjack programmer, and he's landed in what happens to be a shitty job, and they're in dire financial straits and family straits, and stuff just keeps happening. But we're punctuated with, the kid has a teacher at school who doesn't like him, and there's a lady in the church
who doesn't like him. She hates it.
She's emotionally
him.
abusing him. She's bullying him and treating him poorly. And then there's somebody in the church who's really quite a bitch, but she wears the veil of righteousness.
Yeah.
And one of his coworkers, besides being a complete dick, happens to be a pedophile. And I mean, these strange things keep happening, but nothing happens. I mean, there's encounters, but there's no forward momentum to the story.
Interesting.
And if it weren't for that prologue, I would have gotten 2/3 into it and been like, I'm just seriously not enjoying this anymore. There's, there's some of the characters I identify with, but they're not doing anything I care about.
That's fascinating. I actually like the family drama. There's aspects to it. Reading this again, I've read this many, many times, and reading it again. And when I reread a book for the podcast, now there's always like sort of a little thing sitting over my head, thinking, what is Tom going to think of this? Which makes me read it in a different way, which is interesting. So as I'm reading through this again, one of the things I'm thinking is, there's two things I was thinking. One is that there's an incredible sense of menace in this book, which I guess you could say menace if you're being generous, or paranoia if you're not. This family is beset on all sides by horrible people doing horrible things. And they expect that. They're just like, okay, well, this guy mentioned that he, babysits for kids, so he's probably a pedophile, and that turns out to be true. Mm-hmm. And he gets confirmation of that later, but right away he's just like, oh my God, a pedophile, and oh my God, this teacher is horrible, and oh my God, they're trying to destroy me at this job, and it's just like bad shit keeps happening constantly. It's just like their life is walking on a tightrope because they're broke, partly because of some bad financial decisions. Yeah, but it's like you say, it's a nonstop litany of just terrible things getting heaped on this family, which I found kind of exciting. I like that. But it seems at this read through, I felt like, man, this family's really paranoid. They're really paranoid. They kind of approach the world defensively.
They're really paranoid, and yet they did not, and especially given their religious leanings, they did not jump to a very obvious conclusion that I jumped to early on with the plagues of insects that kept swarming through their house.
Yes.
I think 4 distinct times, they wake up and there's some new form of insect has invaded some portion of the house. No. And it just seems like such a screamingly obvious, for somebody who really believed in religion, either we're being punished or there's something demonic. I kept waiting for them to pick up on that thread, which other than acknowledging and going, well, maybe we're being tested like Job, and then they just keep moving on.
Interesting. Yeah, that's another wonderful little piece of menace. I had a different immediate impression about that, which is that, as it turns out, spoiler, that's your second warning, there are dead bodies under their house. Mm-hmm. And so I assumed that, as the bodies compose, they attract different kinds of insects.
Well, you can easily plug that in retrospect when you know what's going on.
Yeah, but that turns out not to be the case. That was my assumption. It's like, okay, this is the beetle phase of decomposition, and this is the whatever phase of decomposition. And no, it turns out to be something else, some psychic, very unsatisfying psychic phenomenon.
Yeah, the insects were fleeing from the evil beneath the house.
Yes, which I didn't find.
As more evil got dumped under the house, then I guess the insects had different tolerance levels for evil.
I guess. I don't know.
All the June bugs fled through the storm window in the kitchen and got trapped. Yeah,
I kind of felt like he wrote himself into a corner there. He was like, I think this is the thing. I'm just going to write the insects. And he's like, oh, no, it's not a thing. Patchwork, because I don't want to keep them. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, the other thing I noticed this time that didn't jump out at me before, because in a lot of ways I really like this family dynamic. They're very committed to their family. They take a lot of these terrible things in stride. They're prepared to make enormous sacrifices for each other. They're completely devoted to each other, which is all great. I love all of that. And yet they snip at each other constantly. They are constantly doubting each other. They are constantly being uncharitable towards each other. And I'm like, is he just trying to be realistic, or is this how he thinks, adult human relationships go? They seemed, for a family that was so well adjusted in some ways, incredibly cruel towards each other in other ways.
Well, and it seemed like it was always reaction to adversity. It was always stress and emotion that pushed them into that.
Yeah.
And I find that believable.
That's fair.
And they rebound from it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like the family that they wanted to be.
Yes.
And I never did quite decide who the protagonist of this book is. I finally have decided to root for Stevie in that role. And I loved the fact that the parents could see that something was going wrong with Stevie. And they really, really, really wanted to do something about it and they were literally just blocked at every turn.
Yeah.
They couldn't spend the time with him. She's pregnant and doing church things. He's slave to an unforgiving boss and financially unable to leave.
And doing a coding project on the side at home.
Yeah.
In addition to his church duties, which are numerous.
Yep.
Yeah.
The farther into the book you got, the more prevalent the church becomes.
Yeah.
But also the more supportive the church becomes.
Yes.
This was interesting. Again, I know very little about the Church of LDS, but there was nothing in this that seemed off-putting. Although, and they even danced around some issues of doctrine.
That was fascinating.
The psychiatrist's son, Lee, finds out apparently there's a tenet somewhere in Mormonism where becoming a god is literally possible. And he just clamps onto that.
Yes.
And our hero Step is like, wow, now that's just something we don't talk about. Most of us aren't even sure, what Joseph Smith, I blanked on the name there, was talking about. So, it's in there and we know that it's in there, but we don't talk about this. But Lee is just, I am the God, God, I have awakened. God, he was such a good, unbalanced, unhinged person.
He was scary. Yeah. And, one of the things that's fascinating is that this guy is obviously mentally unwell. And yet Step, our programmer guy, is like, well, I need to discourage him from craziness, but I don't want to discourage him from the church because I will feel bad if I turn him away.
Right.
Yeah. So he puts up with all sorts of nonsense from this guy. He's so careful. He's so considerate not to just do something just like, no, shut up. I'm going to baptize my son, you crazy asshole. He's very careful in how he handles him. More, I think, careful than he deserves. Based on his behavior, because he really doesn't want to discourage him from being a member of the church. So, yeah.
And as often the case, I think he tends to be more careful in his interactions with other people than he is in his interactions with his own family.
Yes, especially with his wife. I think he lets fly with his wife far too often, and then he has to backpedal. Well,
she lets fly at him and has to backpedal.
That is also true. Yeah.
I love it. So they talk about when Step first walks into his office for the first time and it's empty, and then he walks into Glass's office. Who's the genius programmer that's keeping the company afloat and also happens to be the pedophile.
Yeah.
But the description here, the counter itself was crowded with Commodore 64s, a couple of VIC-20s, a TI, a Radio Shack color computer, even one of those crummy little Timex computers. I grew up on all of these things.
Yes.
I had the VIC-20. I had the Commodore 128, which they never talk about. My friend had a Coco. I had one of the little Timexes.
I had a TI 99.4, and I programmed Apple IIs, Commodore 64s, IBM PC, of course, when it came out.
Of course.
Yeah.
Followed by the PC-80.
Oh, that was a machine.
I'm telling you.
Yeah. So, okay. So, sidebar, because this has nothing to do with the story. I found his obsession with the Atari and his dinging on the Commodore and the Apple II. He was shitting on the Apple II and the IBM PC. And I'm just like, dude, seriously? These are classic landmark computers. The Atari was a game console. And he's like, no, I've never programmed for it. Maybe it was an incredibly elegant architecture. But the Apple II is a work of genius. And the IBM PC was so far ahead of anything else. And he's just like, 4 colors.
Yeah.
So,
well, there were definitely shades of, what was it, Masters of Doom?
Yes.
Just going through, reliving this era of technology with a certain sense of nostalgia.
So Card, as it turns out, wrote computer manuals at one point. I don't know if he was ever a programmer. I don't think he was, but he was a tech writer. So he does have some knowledge of this sort of thing. But I do find his biases funny. Yeah. So talking about menace again, one of the most menacing things that happens in the book for me, he shows up, he needs this job, he's desperate for this job, and they're running a cracked version of his game, the game that made him all that money. And they're just like, yeah, they just cracked it. And it's like, oh, what are you guys doing?
Mm-hmm.
What are you guys doing with my game that you've busted the copyright protection on? Yeah, it's like, and later his asshole boss, Dickie, says, good news, we're going to publish your game. He's like, no, you can't. I already sold the rights. And just gets furious at him. Never asked him, never signed a contract, never approached him. Yeah. Just.
Well, when he first showed up and they pushed the contract across the table at him,
oh my God.
The first contract they tried to get him to sign would have given them the rights to anything he had already written.
Yes.
And anything he continued to write for the year after he left him, if he left them or whenever he left them.
Yeah.
He's walking out the office door, and it turns out that they had another more reasonable contract written up and ready to go, which specifically excluded that. But then later, when he realizes that he's in a place he needs to get out of as fast as possible, he tries to get a copy of that contract. They stymie him, and he ends up getting a secretary who goes into the boss's secretary's office while they're both on lunch to get him a copy of contract. This sounds like underhanded the way I'm putting it. He didn't do it in an underhanded way. He just kept asking people and asking people and asking people. And finally he went to ask one day, and the only person in the office with this other secretary, who apparently hadn't gotten the memo of, we're dicking him over, so don't give him any ammunition.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things I find sympathetic is when everyone's a dick to your main character, and he is surrounded by dicks. Stepp is, if you consider him the main character, surrounded by people who are trying to do him dirty at every turn. It's incredible. And he manages to navigate this with some modicum of grace, although he is very, very stressed about it. Yeah. Okay, so talk about menace. Again, bad stuff happens, bad stuff happens, bad stuff happens. The ultimate bad thing happens at the end of the book. We'll talk about that at some point. But just very, very late in the book, they have a fourth child. And the fourth child is a very difficult delivery and turns out to have cerebral palsy.
So that's what their live-in nurse, or not their live-in nurse, but their visiting nurse finally decides it could be.
Yes.
Now this is something that actually bothered me.
Yeah?
So throughout the book, we have this idea of God putting you where you need to be, and then they keep having examples of that working out. Mm-hmm. Well, it turns out the little nothing town they're in happens to have the world premier cerebral palsy facility at it.
Yeah.
And there's also a cerebral palsy daycare center. And these things, one of them is subsidized by the state, and one of them is subsidized by wealthy benefactors, and you have a very small copay. And yet, the hospital they're in, with the pediatrician who's been there for 20 years and is the best pediatrician in the state, and the neonatal specialist that they bring in, who's the best neonatal specialist in the state, are in the city with the premier cerebral palsy facilities, and neither of them think to say, maybe it's cerebral palsy.
Well, I think that's kind of addressed in a sideways fashion in that, and I don't know this about cerebral palsy, or didn't know this, and I assume this is true, that it's not really a diagnosis. It's a sort of a catch-all term. It's like, oh, you've got some weird shit happening that we can't explain, but it has these constellation of symptoms. We're going to call that cerebral palsy. So the doctors at the hospital are trying to find out what the underlying cause of what's going on with this kid, and they don't know. And then they go, well, he's got enough of this shit happening that we can label this now cerebral palsy.
But they don't. They're not the ones that label it.
No, they don't. Yeah.
That bothered me,
That's fair. Yeah.
A little thing, though.
All right. So the point I was making is that they introduce this. I mean, she's pregnant. The wife is pregnant for most of the book. She delivers the child. It's a very difficult delivery. And then, of course, all sorts of drama with the kid having various difficulties, which ultimately turned out to be cerebral palsy, maybe. That's just like, they take that in stride more than any other shit that happens to them. More than the threat of losing their job, more than anything else, dealing with this psychopath. They're just like, oh, well, we've got this kid and he's going to be a challenge, but we're going to love him and he's part of the family and moving on. Yeah. And that's kind of amazing to me. I don't, like any other book, this would be like, okay, well, this is it. This is massive family drama and we're just going to deal with that and nothing else. You got a family and they're on the edge, and then they have this very difficult, very expensive child come into their life. And what happens? What's the fallout? How do they disintegrate from there? If anything, it makes them stronger. It pulls them together. And again, it's just introduced at the very, very end of the book. It's just like, and moving on. Yeah.
Yeah. They take it in turns. He's got some physical issues. They take it in turns to give him a sort of physical therapy, which it turns out they've been doing the right thing. But even Robbie,
Robbie, yeah.
Gets to have zap bending duties.
Yes.
All of the kids have fun nicknames, and the
Robot is one of his, and he's got another one I can't remember.
doesn't come to me at the moment. Yeah.
Elizabeth is Betsy Wetsy, and Stevie is Doorman. The wife is Junk Lady, which I don't find very flattering.
Fish Lady.
Fish Lady? Oh, he's Junk Man.
He's Junk Man.
Junk Man and Fish Lady, yeah.
Which they explain early on, and I promptly forgot.
I don't remember either.
Yeah, but I think it was cutesy to them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was fun. That goes away in the very end too.
Yes. I did like that. It's like, no, the nicknames were part of a unit, and once they lose Stevie, they decide to give up all the nicknames.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the end.
We keep alluding to it. We might as well get there, yeah. Well, actually, but before we get to the end, before we get to the end, I want to talk about
The video game?
Stevie's friends.
Stevie's imaginary friends.
When, I don't know how long it's been since the first time you read it, when did you put it together that the names of Stevie's imaginary friends had to be the names of the disappearing children?
I don't think I put it together until the wife put it together and sort of called it out. Did
Really?
you figure that out in advance?
Yes.
Wow.
When she was making the list of names, when the psychiatrist asked her for a list of names of
Yeah.
imaginary friends, and she wrote down 3 or 4 names,
Yeah.
and then Robbie came along, he said, "Oh, you forgot
Alex or Sandy
Zach,"
or something.
whatever.
Yeah.
There was one that he had forgotten. Yeah, he just showed up, and with that line, I was like, "These are the names of the kids that are going missing."
Nice.
And somehow it's tied to the video game he's playing.
Yeah.
His dad gets glimpses of him playing a game that's impossible. It's an
Yes.
impossible video game, but he can never make the time to tear himself away from the crisis of the moment to really look at it.
Yeah.
And so for a while, I was convinced this is where it was going to go. It was going to take a sci-fi turn, and somehow they're living in the computer, right? And Stevie's their interface.
Oh, that's sort of true. They're not living in the computer, but that's his medium for talking to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're not alive. They're all dead at that point. That's how they join the list. But they're kind of hanging around, and what he does through the medium of the game is sort of collect them together.
All right.
All right. So yeah, so good for you for figuring that out. I did not figure that out in advance.
Yeah, I was thinking this is going to end up being a sci-fi. This is going to be one of those that turns sci-fi in the last chapter, but nope.
Nope. It turns dark fantasy instead.
Yep.
Yeah. So we were approaching Christmas, and Stevie starts acting particularly weird. Like, he's been weird the whole book, but he gets even weirder in the week leading up to Christmas. And that turns out to be because he is also dead.
Yep.
But because he spent so much time interacting with these other dead kids, the Lost Boys, he is able to project himself to appear to his family. They can't touch him, so he freaks out when his parents try to touch him, and they just chalk it up to his condition, whatever it is. They still don't know, and decide to leave him alone. But then, as sort of a Christmas miracle, he teaches all the other boys how to reappear. And that's what convinces the detective that, yes, these are the actual victims of the serial killer. And then they have enough information to go and arrest Bappy, who turns out to be not only are the bodies buried under their house, but their house caretaker is the serial killer.
Yeah. The old man who moved out of the house, or was moved out of the house by his younger son. And they're living in his house, and he keeps showing up to do things for him.
Yeah.
He shows up to spray the crickets, when they have the first infestation. He shows up to hang Christmas lights. He shows up to mow the lawn. In fact, he shows up just about any time, and sometimes on no provocation. He just shows up. It crossed my mind, Bappy's probably the killer, but every single person in that book, at some point, it crossed my mind, they're probably the killer.
I was really fixed on Glass. I thought it had to be Glass. Yeah, Bappy kind of escaped my notice because he's so friendly.
It's
so interesting.
Friendly.
And this is another great thing that the prologue does, as much as I don't like it. It sets this up very well. There's a massive dissociation between Bappy and Boy.
Yeah.
Boy does the things, and that allows Bappy to be his kindly, generous old man who everybody loves. Yeah, Boy is the bad one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you kind of moved right over what I thought was the most shaking you talked about gut punch,
yeah.
but the moment when I realized that the author had completely twisted the world on me. So it's Christmas Eve, right?
Yeah.
And Step is working on code. He thought he had a minute to work on code, so he's in there on the computer doing his thing. And of course, a minute when you're doing a thing on the computers. And suddenly his wife is in the door, and she's a little bit wobbly. And she says, Stevie brought his friends over.
His imaginary friends
over.
are at the door.
Yeah, Step's like, yeah, I'll be there in a minute. She's like, Step, they're at the door. And she steps back and opens the door, and out in the yard is Stevie and these multiple dead children.
Yeah.
They don't particularly look dead. I mean, this is where Stephen King would have done it differently, right? Because they're not like zombies or rotted or anything like that. They're just children standing out there.
Yeah. Well, they're not Pet Cemetery undead. They're ghosts, basically.
They're projections.
Yeah.
Although the sheriff was definitely a Stephen King character, right? He's the wizened old timer that understands there's more to this world, and
absolutely,
and he's just going to roll with it. So he runs out there, he sees these dead kids, and what does he do? He gets on the phone and starts calling their parents to get them to the house while there's time to say goodbye.
Yeah, that's the gut punch for me.
Yeah,
yeah, not the. I mean, that's a great twist where the wife says they're at the door, and I love that moment. But when the parents come over, because they know, well, they don't know. They don't know there's a serial killer until they confirm for the detective, the sheriff, whatever he is, that yes, these are the same boys. And so they know, okay, well, we definitely know it's a serial killer then. And then we can give the parents closure. We definitely know that your son is dead because their name is on this list. And but then also now you get a chance to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And he manages to keep it all hush-hush. This is going on inside the house while outside the house, lights are being set up and bodies are being exhumed and laid out on the lawn. And Yep.
Anyway, so if you haven't read it, I'm sorry we spoiled it for you.
We gave you warnings, more than one.
Yeah. So how does that ending work for you?
Well, it was kind of amazing.
Yeah, okay.
And it didn't quite end where I thought it would.
Interesting.
Because I kind of thought, that would be it. We would have that moment, that absolute stunning turn, and all the parents get that moment to say they've got kids, and that would be the end of it. Yeah. But no, the church springs into action. It gets the family out of there, and it moves them. It finds them a new house. It moves their possessions in. It takes care of getting them relocated. It takes care of getting the young one into those specialized facilities, and they're allowed to resume their lives.
Yeah. No, I think this is because Orson Scott Card is Mormon, and I think he wanted to set out to write a novel about what it is to be Mormon and what it is to be a part of that community, and how supportive that community can be, but also how it's not a perfect community, and there are people who will just they take advantage of their position to fuck with you, and the challenges of being part of something like that. It's very demanding, obviously. There are slackers who love to take a role but then don't do the work that's required, and so on and so forth. But I think that was his goal, and then he laced it with this mystery, and then he dumped all this menace on top of it. Yeah. So anyway, I found this a very satisfying novel, and knowing the ending, it just hits me even harder. Reading through it, just knowing what's happening with Stevie, knowing the ending is just like, oh my God. Please pay attention to your son. Please save him from this teacher.
Yeah, we the readers are never given any reason to doubt Stevie.
Yes.
But we're never shown either. We're never shown the realities.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that when his dad finally started putting pieces together and believed that his son was being accurate about it, and the way that he would just turn and tackle head on whatever it was in front of him. Yeah. The way he went after the teacher who had been bullying him in class.
That's very satisfying.
It was. Even if he himself lacked the satisfaction of it, he felt bad about himself afterwards.
Yeah.
It's like, no. You did no wrong there.
Yeah. One of the things that's interesting is the tension between, so Step knows that Stevie is absolutely trustworthy, and yet he doubts him with the teacher. And Stevie has a reputation for never lying, and yet he doesn't believe this because the teacher's behavior is so extreme.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that every single thing he said is confirmed to be accurate and true. And he's like, oh my God, why did I doubt you? I know you tell the truth. I know you're the most honest kid alive. And yet I doubted you. And then he starts having imaginary friends. And Stevie goes, no, they're real. And he goes, yeah, I know you think they're real. Pat, pat, pat.
Yeah.
Let's send you to a psychiatrist. It's like,
well, he fought against the psychiatrist.
He did fight against the psychiatrist, yes. But not because he believes Stevie, because he hates psychiatrists.
Because he hates psychiatrists, indeed.
Yeah. And with good reason, it turns out in this book, because she's awful.
There was, so, a little bit of a trope, the psychiatrist with the terribly disturbed son.
Yeah.
But, I think we established that Lee was 18
Something
or
like
19.
that. Certainly, he's adult age.
Right.
Yeah.
But at some point, she says, I became a psychiatrist to try and understand him.
Yeah.
How long does it take to become a psychiatrist from scratch?
Well, she could have made that decision while she was already in medical school. You need an MD.
That's true.
Yeah.
If you were to just start today from scratch, and
You'd
have to go to
4 years
medical
of
school, then have to go
residency,
through the residency,
internship. Yeah.
and then go back for their psychiatry. Yeah.
Oh, well, your psychiatry would be part of your residency. You would do
Would
it
it?
as I think so. Yeah. So it'd just be like 6 years, 7 years, I think.
All right.
Yeah. I don't know. Just my dad's a psychiatrist. A good one, not
Not her.
not evil. Yeah.
There are several times in the story where he writes where the author takes us and he starts making a big deal about a thing, and then that thing just disappears from the book and isn't revisited again. This is a strange one to pick on, but it just happens to be the highlight I'm looking at. Stepp gets taken to a conference with his new company. And when he gets there, he discovers that he's been put in a room with glass. And he is really freaking out about being in a room with a non-Mormon because he's going to see his undergarments, and when he sees his underwear, there's going to be questions and explanations that he doesn't want to do. And he is really troubled by this, and he finally gets in a fight with Glass and gets him to leave the room so that he can undress in private, put on pajamas, and then come get in bed under the covers. Yeah. Which just leaves me all afire with curiosity about what's up with Mormon underwear. And yet later in the book, there's a scene where he's running through the house in his underwear, and his children taunt him for running through the house in his underwear. So there's something missing here. I'm missing part of the joke.
It's not a joke. There is, and I don't know a lot about this, but there's special Mormon underwear that you're supposed to wear, and that's all I know. And it's recognizable as Mormon. If you've ever seen a Mormon, you go, aha, that's Mormon underwear. You must be a Mormon. And they're not supposed to take it off except to bathe. Yeah. That was an aspect of why he was uncomfortable sharing a room with Glass, but I don't think that was the whole reason.
That wasn't the whole reason.
Because I'm a person who does not like to share a room with people. I'll share a room with someone if I'm dating them, and otherwise, no. I have to have my own room.
Absolutely.
So, and he says, I just need 30 minutes by myself before I go to bed, and I can't have you just there in my space.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think it was more about that. And then the Mormon underwear on top of that, because Glass has no boundaries whatsoever.
Yeah.
He would just,
But it's not a secret that he's Mormon. Although, again, at that point, I forget exactly where that is in the book, but it's in the earlier part of the book before the degree to which he is Mormon is made clear to us.
Yeah.
Again, we make it a quarter of the way, maybe a third of the way through the book without it being even referenced at all.
Yeah. I took that as he just wants to relax. He wants to be alone. But if he gets undressed for bed, Glass will go, what's up with your fucking underwear, man? And then it's just like, it'll be the opposite of being alone. It'll just be being interrogated by someone he does not want to share this information with to begin with. And it's just even more stressful than just going to bed normally. Yeah. So that's how I took it. I don't think it's a disaster if someone sees you in your underwear and you're Mormon. Yeah, especially not your family. Your family knows.
Well, yeah. But that was part of why. Now, again, his need to be alone comes up repeatedly through the book, and this is actually a source of friction with him and his wife. Yeah. Because the one thing that he needs when he comes home from work is to be alone, and the one thing she needs when he comes home from work is to be an adult there to support her after having been with the kids all day.
Yep.
Stories old as time and kids, right?
Yep. Pretty classic.
I got that feeling several times, though, where there was something that was just of paramount importance, maybe not paramount importance, but something that was really an important thing, and then it just disappears in the next phase of the book. I'm trying to think of another example of it. He walked into the programmer's pit to see them all playing the hacked version of his game.
Yeah.
Right. And then nothing comes of that for several long chapters. And then it's just we've decided to release your game. You can't, I already sold it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't come to anything. There's a buildup that never really
That's
pays
true.
off.
It's more of a lingering threat, that they've cracked his game and they could just publish it as shareware. You could just throw it out there once it's cracked, That was the thing that happened. There was a very active cracking scene in the 80s.
Yeah.
Most people tried not to pay for their games. They'd hop on a BBS and download a cracked version. But another programming thing, this was fascinating to me and just really convinces me that Card, in fact, never actually was a programmer, but just a writer of manuals. He gets a contract to port Hackersnack to the PC. Mm-hmm. And then he goes, oh my God, there's so much more memory on the PC than there was on the Atari. I could do this and this and this. I could change the game entirely to be like da-da-da-da-da, and it's more like some sort of evolution. Da-da-da-da. I'm like, what the hell are you doing, man? That's not what they want. They want Hackersnack. That's what they paid for. They want a straight port so the person who played on the Atari and now they have a PC can play the same game.
Well, he did that when he started looking to move it to the 64 too, because the 64 had more resources than the Atari did. So he was going to, rather than just being snacks and you being the character was going to evolve and the snacks were going to change. I had the same thought. It's like, no, that's not, okay. That's a new game.
Yeah, that's a new game. Nobody wants that. That's not what you're contracted for. It's going to be more work. Yeah, this is just wrong on so many levels. It is a sort of classic programmer trap to fall into. But it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to do it on this new system. It's going to be better. It's going to be better. Nobody wants better. They want the same. Yeah.
Talking about the PC, while he's at that conference, he runs into a few people who he knows by reputation.
Yeah.
And this fellow walked up. Cranes is his last name, but apparently he's the only one in the conference that has any real belief in the PC. But he's standing out there, there are people around him, and he's just proclaiming its values. And I'll tell you about that, he demanded. I'll tell you in 5 years they won't dare offer a PC for sale that doesn't have a megabyte of RAM in it. Because everybody's being so dismissive of what does anybody need 512K for?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Bill Gates famously said at some point, nobody needs more than 256K.
No one needs more than 640K of RAM, I
640K.
think. This was before extended memory was a thing. And I don't think he actually said that. That was apocryphal. So that also struck me as false because I remember when the PC came out that it was immediately a big deal. And everybody, and a bunch of sort of game types were like, well, it doesn't do this and it doesn't do that. And everybody else in the world is like, this is going to crush the business world. This is going to run spreadsheets better than the Apple II runs VisiCalc. And in fact, that's what it did. The first killer app for the PC was Lotus 123, and it just exploded. Yeah. So I think the vision for the PC, maybe in the game community was different, but the vision for the PC was right there from the start. Everybody knew. Yeah. So.
Well, for these guys, it was different from the start. For the Lords of Doom, that was a different thing altogether.
So what did you think of the neighbor, Jenny? She's the one whose kids just run wild.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting point of friction there.
Yeah.
It's a strange place to be in. I mean, you need help. You've got this neighbor who is willing to help you with literally anything, who's eager to help you with literally anything, but whose style of parenting and standards of living are so far removed from your own that being around them is a source of constant tension.
Yes.
But being away from them is being away from somebody who's willing to help you out with stuff you need help with.
I thought that was a rare moment of insight for Card looking at his parenting style compared to other people who are looser, more comfortable. I think he realizes how uptight he is as a human being. I'm imagining. I don't know. I've never met the man. But just based on this and other stuff that I've read, that other people just live their life without stressing about these things. They take the good with the bad. And it's just like, they might die. They might run into the street and get run over by a truck. But probably not. That does happen. And no matter how closely you watch your kids, you're not going to be able to prevent every single possible accident. Yep. But you can certainly drive yourself insane trying to. So,
It gets funny. They when they first realized that there's something really strange going on with Stevie and his imaginary friends and these missing children, and they called a detective and asked him if he'll come over and talk to them because it's going to sound crazy, but this is the deal. And I've forgotten the wife's name.
Deanne?
Yeah, Deanne.
Yeah.
Starts freaking out about the fact, well, where can we talk to him that the children were over here? Well, we'll put the children on this end and we'll talk in the bedroom. But the bedroom's a mess. And they start cleaning up the bedroom, even though Step's saying, I don't think this matters, given what we're talking about.
But she's like, he's not going to take us seriously if our bed isn't made. Yeah. Yeah. So Jenny is a lovely foil for this whole family of just like, yeah.
Well, they both do some ridiculous stuff. When the newspaper has the article about there being a serial killer, it's actually an edition about there being a serial killer. And they take it, they don't do any of the dramatic stuff. They're just publishing facts and whatnot. And Step is trying to reassure Deanne at this point because they've read the article. Yeah. And he says, well, the danger is still there, but it's not pointed at us. I mean, it's like the article says, a child in Steuben is still far more likely to be killed in a traffic accident or a gunshot accident than to be a victim of this killer. Mm-hmm. This is meant to be comforting? This is how you comfort somebody that's worried about their children?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like, well, yeah, that threat is real, but here's some other threats you should worry about that are even worse. Yeah.
Parents have to be less trusting of strangers for a while. That's all. And we were already paranoid, so I think we'll be fine.
Yeah.
But seriously, she's going to comfort her saying, yeah, they're much more likely to get shot or run over than they are to, for the serial killer to find them.
And it's interesting because they are paranoid. They talk about their procedures for dealing with stranger danger, right?
They do.
And they've drilled this stuff. Their kids know it. Yeah. It's not just like, oh, by the way, it's like, no, we practice this stuff. In fact, Stevie gets in trouble for it. For violating school protocol on the first day because mom's late to pick him up.
Yep.
Yeah.
He gets in trouble with school.
Yes.
Because his
yes, not with his mom. His mom says, that's what I
right.
told him to do. In fact, the mom also gets in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was another fun exchange where the mom is like, yes, I understand. This happened, unavoidable. I'll never be late again. And the woman won't let it go. She's just like, but I'm going to tell you again what I just told you. It's like, okay, I understand. It's like, no, I think I need to say this one more time.
She keeps having these brushes with these little Southern women who have just a hint of authority and are determined to milk it for all it's worth.
Yeah.
This is kind of her thing.
Oh, my God. So that was the other thing. The smoking. Everybody smokes. Everybody smokes. They smoke when they're pregnant. They smoke in the house. They smoke nonstop. Yeah, it's insane. Who is it? Some other woman they met from the church says, yeah, I blew my whatever brand cigarette smoke into my baby's face so that he get a taste for the good stuff and not smoke that cheap shit.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
Yep. Card does something that annoys me when you suddenly introduce an important character trait like 85% of the way through the story, and you've never once referenced it before. And here, Step and Deanne were complete news junkies. They ate dinner with the TV blaring away in the family room so they could hear it in the kitchen. And this becomes important because somebody who calls in on the phone, Lee calls in on the phone, he's off his meds, and he can hear in the background the news story that's about him. But I mean, this is late in the book.
Yeah, we never see that.
Never once.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing like with them being Mormon. We get a quarter of the way into the book without a reference of it, and suddenly it becomes very Mormon very quickly all the time. Well, he's consistent from that point on. Yeah. That's just something that irks me when a pivotal moment in the story hinges on a behavior that you haven't set up.
That is absolutely true. Yeah, that's not set up. Yeah, they spend so little time. I don't think the TV's ever referenced.
No.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't think, as serious as they are about family and getting together for family time, they have family meetings that end in prayer and song.
Yeah. That's a
that
weird
they would
thing
have
to do.
TV blaring during mealtime.
TV blaring is very anti-family, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah. So
that just didn't fit for me. It was such a contrivance because he really, really wanted Lee to be on the phone with Step and for Lee to hear that Step was hearing the news story and knew what was going on.
Yeah. All right. I'm just about out of stuff here, but I have one highlight that's a lot of fun. This is, I think, the funniest line in the book. They're talking about how they're going to have to start deadbolting the doors. and taking the key out. Well, and Deanne's worried about that. And she goes, oh, great. What if there's a fire and we can't find the key? Headline, family had plenty of time to escape, but deadbolts were all locked and keys could not be found in time. They don't write headlines that long, said Stepp. Oh, good. So we'll die and no one will even know why.
Yep, that was cute.
I love that. All right. Well, that's Lost Boys. Again, I think if you're going to read Card, this is not your best introduction. Ender's Game or Ender's Shadow, and read that whole series. It's a knockout. I think the Alvin Maker series is also very good. As standalone novels go, this is my absolute favorite of his. So,
yeah, this was a weird one.
It's a weird one.
All right.
What's next?
I think next we need a little bit more Larry Niven in our life with Jerry Pournelle. We're going to do some Lucifer's Hammer.
All right, we've done some Niven and Pournelle before.
We have.
Yeah, a couple times.
Do it again.
In fact. Yeah, all right. Well, good. Lucifer's Hammer. Looking forward to it.
All right, well, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks.